same, but look very carefully. The blobby bit is the main part of the cell. What I want you to look at are the branches. Do you remember I pointed out the beautiful branches in the hippocampus? I'm sure you can see that the branches in the isolated environment are sparser than in the brain cell from the animals in an enriched environment. Why is that interesting or important? Well, I banded off that trillions of brain cell connections. If you're going to make, as brain cells do, 100,000 connections, it's going to be determined by the surface area of the brain cell. The greater the surface area, the more connections can come in. And here they are. That's how you have more surface area. You have more branches. The more branches a brain cell has, the more connections it can make. I repeat, the more branches a brain cell has, the more connections it can make. In turn, those branches, the growth of those branches is driven by interaction with the enriched environment. So let's trace that. An enriched environment causes the growth, drives the growth of those branches, which in turn enables brain cells to form a target to a greater number of connections. So you can see the link between an enriched environment and more connections. So that we can apply to ourselves. This lovely Swedish lithograph of the ages of man, or indeed of woman. Let's just see how we can apply that idea not only to developing a mind, but to losing it as well. All in terms of brain connections. Well, here you can see the embryo, the fetus, the early postnatal, and the mature human brain. Let's stop there for a moment. You can see the blobby bit, and then see the branches. It's the branches that have changed, enabling the brain, as it grows, to make more connections. But now look at what's happened, sadly, over here to the right. The branches have atrophied. And in this case, but it's not a natural consequence of aging, you're looking at a brain cell from someone who is senescent and then senile. Recapitulating childhood. So we can think of branches reflecting the individualization, if you like, the personalization of the mind. The more branches you have, the more connections you make. And I would say that understanding is seeing one thing in terms of something else. That's why we see a significance. For example, you're born, in the words of the great William James, into a booming, buzzing confusion. As a kid, as a baby, as an infant, you'll evaluate the world, because you can't do anything else, in terms of raw sensations. How sweet, how fast, how cold, how bright. But gradually, those sensations are going to coalesce together, if they always occur together, into, let's say, a face that speaks, a face that eventually requires a label, mum, and a mum that features again and again and again in your life. And we've just seen what happens when something features again and again and again in your life. We've seen the piano players, we've seen the taxi drivers. So mum, your mum, no one else's mum, your particular mum featuring day after day is going to drive lots of connections. Your mum has a significance to you that she has to no one else. Okay? Or my mum to you, vice versa. So you personalise your brain. Now imagine it's all residing in those connections forged by the exposure to mum, the constellation of the patterns. Now sadly, imagine if those connections were starting to get dismantled. You'd no longer recognise mum. And that's exactly what happens, sadly, in dementia. Literally a loss of mind. And anyone, and there may well be, given the number of people in the room, people whose lives have been ravaged by this terrible disease, which is the disease I work on, as you just heard, we know that people say it's like they go back to childhood. It's not a mere loss of memory. It's a confusion, a disorientation, a joy at simple things, rather like a small child, because you're getting back into a sensual world away from a cognitive one. Whereas one could say, arguably, as we grow, as we develop as adults, the shift goes from sensory, raw sensations through to cognitive, through to understanding, through to significance, through to meaning, away from raw experiences and sensations. If your brain is dismantled, you go back the other way, away from meaning, away from significance, back to raw sensation, back to experiences. And because you cannot understand it, you're often frightened. Like a small child, if someone came in draped in a sheet, they might think it was a ghost. I don't think many people would think that here. I hope. Yeah, because we have the checks and balances of the adult mind, we're small children. My little brother used to think there were dragons under our bath in Chiswick, you know? And we're telling him that there are no such things as dragons, these are all in Chiswick. But it didn't make any sense. He just was convinced because he lacked the experience and the wisdom and so on to be able to confront the fear.